I will remember you. Will you remember me? Don't let your life pass you by. And so on. Mr. Reisinger, Mr. Matthew, Mr. Nicholson, Dr. Griffith, fellow students, distinguished guests, families, friends, foes, welcome. Now, I'm going to keep this short and sweet. I know we all have places to go and things to do. I don't know about you, but I have a college interview in a couple minutes. I swear, this one's going to work. I can feel it. It's true what they say, the 40th time's the charm. This is how are we doing on time? Okay. Well, I'm a sandboxer, and for those of you who don't know, that means two things. One, I've been a student here for 13 years, since my first day of kindergarten. And two, I like to play in sandboxes. It's a guilty pleasure. But it's unbelievable. I mean, I remember way back in kindergarten, every indoor recess, Tim McKone and I, we dress up as women and put on little skits for the other classmates. Remember that? Tim's the lucky one, though. He's grown out of that phase. But I tell you, it's certainly strange to be up here at this podium reflecting on all the years I've spent here at Bancroft. Sorry. It's Bancroft. I mean, I'll never forget the first day of school when my father walked me to my classroom, knelt down, looked me in the eyes and said, "Kid, you'll never make it alive." And 2 eating disorders later, here I am. I'm just kidding, but I'd like to take this opportunity to thank my fellow classmates for choosing me to give this speech. Really, I don't know what I would have done with that one last assignment looming over my head. Thanks. But in all seriousness, when I sat down to write this speech, 2 hours ago, I thought long and hard about what to reminisce about. There was that time in kindergarten where Tim, Jared Ellison, Byron James, and I wrote a love letter to a beautiful and mature first grader. We didn't even know her name, but when we left the classroom to leave it by our backpack, Mrs. Mangano caught us and brought us back to the classroom. So there I was, holding an elaborate love letter peppered with hearts and smiley faces, and no one to give it to. So I ended up giving it to my grandmother, and she put it on her bedroom wall. And I'll also never forget the time in first grade where there was a marker thief among us who would go through our desks when we weren't looking and steal colorful utensils. We had meetings about this and Mrs. Holden begging for the culprit to come forward, but no one ever did. My own personal philosophy was that there was no thief. We were just a bunch of irresponsible first graders who lost everything and didn't want to own up to it. Either that or it was Chris Frendel. Now, I'll never forget Chris Frendel, or any of the other kids I grew up with who left Bancroft for different schools. Remember Evan Stratus? He could do that thing where he'd flip his eyelids up and churn everyone's stomach. It was gross. And then there was Micah, who came back for a day in 3rd grade, only to give us a 1-question survey on a slip of paper. Should I come back to Bancroft, yes or no? I voted yes, I liked Micah. There was also Howard, who never really had much to say. Remember Howard? I've been attending this school since 1993, and I remember when the dining hall was in fact the gymnasium. There was woodworking class with Mr. McKone, where I built and painted my very own footstool. That was also the year I broke my leg, but, well, never mind. There was the first grade book project where I wrote with Kate Salucci, the then governor's daughter, about a book about learning how to drive with an escaped convict. Back in lower school, I used to want to be a scientist, as strange as that may seem now. My GPA would say otherwise. Mrs. Burka taught us all about NASA and the clouds and owl pellets, among many other fascinating subjects. That was a great class. We also read several great books back then, and some not so great. Island of the Blue Dolphins was not my particular favorite. And Tuck Everlasting, man, that book just never seemed to end. We left lowered school and entered middle school, only to find a world of infractions, citations, awkward puberty, and sexual education. These were my favorite years at Bancroft School. And each year ended with a trip to some remote location, either to Mount Tom, or as I like to call it, Thomas Mountain, or a hike to the top of Mount Monadnock. We even went on a whale watching boat ride at the end of 7th grade and saw dolphins as they swam next to us. I couldn't appreciate this, however, due to early bad connotations with dolphins from a certain book we had to read. Middle school was a time when bad taste was good taste, Weird Al Yankovic ruled our stereos, and the only people with facial hair were those who hadn't started shaving yet. I remember one day during gym class when Joel Cutler called me over and said, "Dude, you see this right here? It looks awful, man. You gotta start shaving." Needless to say, that night I purchased my first razor blade. Throughout the years, there have also been many great plays, movie nights, and activities of all sorts. I mean, Bancroft has always been an institution that isn't afraid to let its hair down, jump on a trampoline, and have fun. I'm sure if George Bancroft were alive today, he'd be the first one to say, "God, I'm old." And just the fact that Bancroft School has been around since 1990 proves its importance in the cultural history of Worcester. I mean, it's clear that we have this school to thank for Worcester's booming tourist industry and blossoming economy. And what better than the beautiful Indian Lake to have right across the street to look at whenever you need a reminder at how lovely a city this really is. Well, I've learned a lot inside these walls. Not these walls, but the ones over there. History, Latin, Spanish, French, English, science, math. But more than anything, I've learned about myself. And I've learned that, you know, I really don't like school. It's not my thing. But despite all the trials and tribulations, we've all made it this far. And today is the diving board to the swimming pool of life. And I hope to God it's not the shallow end. And with that, I'll leave you. I've never been very good at goodbyes, so hello.